Hello and welcome to this part 19 of my series on building up my own magic set. And this time I'm covering the rest of the green rares and mythics, besides the ones belonging to the cycles covered in part 14. And admittedly, I was kind of lost when it came to green. So well, like with blue and black, I might have gone a little bit too much with just things I like, rather than having like putting too much emphasis on the flavor of the world. Although I do have some, at least hopefully. Well, part of the world is that there can be pretty much anything. So I try to do. I try to add like weird creatures, and I did try to emphasize certain uh, mechanics of the set, certain themes in the set. But yeah. So starting with Terran Sculptor, Elf Druid 3 and a G2/2, you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may pay lands from the top of your library or from your graveyard. So basically a combination of uh, different creatures. There's several of these creatures which allow you to play cards from lands from the top of your library. I thought about there was in some hopefully I don't have it here. I'll just check just in case. No, I remember thinking about putting a card from it was on some core set, a card which you could look at the top card of your library, tap. It was a 2-mana 2/1/3, and you could tap to look at the top card of your library, and if it's a land, you could put it into your hand. Sorry. I thought about putting that into this set at some point, but I had to check that I didn't do it. I wasn't sure now that I thought about it. But anyway, so it's a combination of, we have these both effects. We have seen these both effects in green. Ramunap Excavator is the one that plays lands from the graveyard. It's a 3-mana 2/3 from Amonkhet. And then there's in the last, might even be Crimson Vow, might be Midnight Hunt, don't remember for sure. No, it's Midnight Hunt because it has common. It's also 2-mana 2/3, and you can play lands from top of your library, but if you have common, it can play creatures as well. So this is in many ways a combination of these two. And of course, there's Oracle of Mordaya as well, and whatever that centaur creature from Theros was back in the day. But yeah, combination of two effects. So, but there is a flavor reason for this. So, what I wanted to capture here was that there is a group of these people who are trying to understand the world. So perhaps this guy, who is a rare, mind you, so not many people can do this, but or gal, I don't know. It's a man in my mind, although it is not legendary, so it can be either. Has learned some secret and can possibly, like, when something falls into this world from somewhere else, maybe this guy has a little bit of control over that. Although I've also stated that land masses just don't come here that often anymore, because the current breed of planeswalkers just aren't powerful enough. But it's also possible that there's, still land masses floating somewhere in the blind eternities that ended up there from before the mending. Who knows? yeah, so then Charge Tactician, Human Warrior 2G, 2/2. When it attacks, each other attacking creature control gains plus X, where X is card name's power. So I should have made this more interesting, possibly. But this is something that has been done a couple of times before. I think it's in Avacyn Restored. There's a creature with an ability like this, I think. And also on Calades, there was a creature like this, but that creature had also Fabricate. So I think it was a 4-mana 1/1 or 4-mana 2/2, and with Fabricate of 2 or 3. I don't remember exactly, but something like that. So that gave you that extra interesting decision-making part, especially in the Calades version. So I guess this is kind of boring compared to that, but I just wanted to put like a mechanic that hasn't been used much recently. There's a possibility that it's just as an ability, it's just a little bit too strong, but I don't know. There must be a reason why they haven't been doing it much. I guess they just haven't been able to. It's a possibility that they haven't just been able to come up with anything interesting with it. And well, we've seen something similar in the meantime, like on Throne of Eldraine, there's the one creature, I think it's 2-mana 2/2 green creature that gives its power to X plus X, where X is its power to one other attacking creature. So that's sort of similar, but yeah. But again, gladly I don't have to test this. So I also decided to have an ooze. I'm not as big a fan of oozes as some other people, but I am a big fan of this specific ooze. So it's a reprint from, I believe, original Innistrad, at least from that original Innistrad block. So it's Triple G. It starts out as a 1/1, but anytime it attacks, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and anytime a creature that it has dealt damage to dies, it also gets a +1/+1 counter. So I don't know. This was just, a fun deck I liked to play back in the day. Like I would use I think it's called Ulveval Tracker or something like that, which was a 1-mana 1/1 that would let a creature you control fight with another creature, like with tap and 2 mana or something. So in that specific time, it wasn't very good because there were a lot of console decks around, and which had like a lot of things that were able to destroy, exile this. And obviously, having 2 creatures on the battlefield against against control decks, if you can avoid it, it's a good idea. And this would get countered quite often. Although there definitely was also the opportunity to just get this down on turn 2, which often meant that you could do a lot of damage with it sometimes. But anyway, I just liked that deck. It wasn't a good deck, but I liked it. I had weird things like the thing that soul bonded with something else, and then they would both get +4/+4. And I would also have that one legendary green creature, like 4-mana 4/4 that gave flash to all of your creatures. So I would be able to flash that specific creature into play, and it was a fun deck to play. It just wasn't very good in that specific environment. Yeah. Although Flash was actually pretty good against the console decks, especially if you had haste creatures, which I usually did. Um, yeah, well, obviously there's limited number of haste creatures in green, but generally I did. But yeah, then Impetuous Charger, Rocks Warrior, 3 5/5, haste, trample, vigilance, kind of a basic thing, but still very powerful. A very powerful creature. I did think about charging Monstersaur here. So maybe this should be like a little bit better because that's a 5-mana 5/5 with haste and trample. But on the other hand, that was also extremely good. So it could have easily been a rare. So in that sense, this is fine. And the vigilance can be on a big creature can be very problematic for many decks. So maybe I should just, yeah, let's do it. Let's make this a little bit more. Now it has all the green keywords. I think that's all. Well, it could have ward, but I don't think that's necessary. It's already bad enough. Then Nursing Oak, 3/4, 4/GT, 6/6. When it EDP, draw card for each 1/1 creature you control. Because there is this 1/1 theme. There's a lot of things that can produce 1/1s. So I thought that, yeah, there should be something here. Some extremely powerful thing to do with the 1/1s. Then Hagstalker, which was based on Witchstalker from, again, some core set from some years back. I think it's Pioneer legal, but I'm pretty sure it's Pioneer legal card. It's a wolf, 1/3, 3/3. It has hexproof, and I think it gains a +1/+1 counter whenever an opponent casts blue or black instant or sorcery. I'm pretty sure. Not completely sure, but pretty sure. So I didn't want to put hexproof on anything. I don't like hexproof on creatures. I do think having hexproof in as an ability is a good idea, but I think it should be limited to, you know, cards like Snakeskin Veil or whatever. I'm not sure they should have both hexproof and ward in use. It's in general, but I do think that hexproof in that limited context is pretty good. It is a pretty good ability to have available for the designers. Yeah. Where was I? Yeah. So yeah, so it has ward 3 instead of the hexproof, and then whenever an opponent surveys or scries, put +1/+1 counter on card name. There's not many references to scrying in the set, but here's one. I think there's some reprinted card somewhere that scries that probably shouldn't. Probably should surveil instead. But yeah, here we are. Then Protective Parent, Elf Peasant, 1/3, 3/3 flash. And if it isn't your turn, card name enters the battlefield tapped. And when card name enters the battlefield, another creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. Oh yeah, completely forgot that I had this one next year. But anyway, so here's one mention of hexproof. Again, this is something I like. This is something where I like the way you can use hexproof, like to, you know, you can't use ward this way because ward is a trigger when you cast a spell. So if you would give ward to something at instant speed against something as a response to something, it wouldn't do anything. So this is where I like hexproof. And but yeah, and I wanted to make this like there have been cards like this before. I think there was a card like this in Ixalan, which would give hexproof to 1GG 3/3 Merfolk, which would give hexproof to another Merfolk when it enters the battlefield. But okay, so this can give the hexproof to anything, but I thought that I should balance that out by making this come down tapped if you cast it on opponent's turn. So this can't block at when it immediately as it comes into play. So you can't use this to ambush anything. But you can still, like, if you have this in your deck, you can make your opponent's timing a little bit awkward. They have to play they have to try to find opportunities to play around this, because obviously in many ways this is more powerful than like a white card that gives indestructible or hexproof, because it does leave behind the body, so it's often a 2-for-1 depending, and well, it is a 2-for-1 if you manage to counter like a removal spell with this. But moving on to the mythics, so Spirit Mount, Spirit Wolf, 4GG, 6/6, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature from among those creatures onto the battlefield. And then lots of other text. If the mana value of that creature is less than 5, surveil X, where X is 5 minus the mana value of that creature. So yeah, little bit of collected company action. Not necessarily collected company action. I guess there's a lot of other cards like that in green. Well, I think this is there is a potential here for very huge blowouts if you can find something very big. But then, okay, finally, Battlefield Hydra, which is a Hydra, which is the iconic creature type for green. Why did I forget that? So it's a 4 and a triple G, so 7 mana total, 7/7. And whenever one of more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, surveil X, where X is the amount of damage dealt, then draw a card for each of those creatures with power 4 or greater and put +1/+1 counter on this creature for each card surveilled into the graveyard. A lot of text. I don't know. I don't feel good about this card. I hate the idea of being able to surveil like more than 4 or 5, because that will take ages. Like how do you decide which of those to keep, and how do you decide which of those you want to draw like next turn? But still, I decided to do it, for whatever reason. Not that there's a downside to this, because obviously, again, this isn't an official card. Okay, so one thing I notice right now is that all of these are creatures. Maybe I should have tried to come up with something else. Also, I noticed that I was meant to put a ramp card here, but I apparently didn't. Oh, I do have one ramp card, an enchantment in part of the cycles, but yeah, that's a different thing. And I do have the Terran Sculptor that can, at least make playing lands more consistent, even if it doesn't actually ramp. Yeah, I do have a feeling that I pushed like the idea that these need to be able to end the game because these are big and or they can grow possibly quite fast. Well, Predator Roost is going to be slow, but it definitely can end the game. But okay, so we're closing in on the end here. I will have, hopefully in the next few days, I will have the colorless part. I go through the colorless cards, obviously. And then finally I'll have an extra, the final part will be, I guess it's going to be part 21. Oh, there's so many of these things. Anyway, on that part 21, I'll go through some of the things I've learned during this process. But yeah, thanks for listening, and do the YouTube things if you're so inclined, and hopefully I'll see you next time.